Shane, you gotta keep the noise down. Okay, aloha everyone, and we are live here on Facebook. Welcome to Lahui Updates. Today is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. I'm Helani Sonora Pale. I'm with KaLahuiHawaiiKomikeKalaiaina, Hawaii. And tonight's topic is the Department of Education, their rule change that would be inclusive of public input in terms of developments within 5 miles of any public school or library. We have with us two attorneys that were part of this issue, and Sunny Unga, who is a parent of school-age children at Kahuku Elementary. And what are, let's just grab my notes. Here we go. So we're very honored and grateful to have all of you on the show, Bianca, Isaki, Lance Collins, and Sunny Unga. I'll have you folks introduce yourselves just a couple minutes. But I want to acknowledge first our sign interpreters, Jenny Blake and Laura Skronowski. So, and we are very honored and privileged to have them here so that we can be inclusive of our deaf Lahui and they can engage in issues that affect all of us. Okay, so Sunny Unga, a Kahuku mom, and right now we're gonna have a discussion on your suit. You sued the Board of Education and the state of Hawaii for shutting you out of a meeting. And your mother in Kahuku. So if you can just share a little bit more about yourself and your involvement in the community in Kahuku. Mahalo, Sunny.
First of all, mahalo Healani for creating this wonderful platform to really spread the word and inform people about what's going on. I appreciate it, even though this was very last minute. So thank you so much for putting this together. And yes, my name is Sunny Unga, and I'm a mother of 3 children, 2 of them which attend Kahuku Elementary School. My ties to Kahuku is my husband is a lifelong Kahuku, born and raised, graduated from Kahuku High School. I was born here, lived here early on, but then moved around, but eventually came back here to Kahuku, and now we're trying to raise our children here. And we actually lived in town for quite some time, for 10 plus years, just because it was convenient. My husband's work was there. But we decided to relocate back to Kahuku because we wanted to raise our children in a place where, there's a sense of community and people looked after your children. And so, and so I became aware of these industrial wind turbines last year. Was it last year? It's already last year. Yeah, midsummer. And my initial thinking was, wow, we already have 12. How come we're having 8 additional turbines? And so I started looking more into it, and then I just became very concerned about the proximity to our schools in the community and how that would impact our children. Especially, as you can see in the back, I went around our community today and took some pictures. Those 4 turbines are right behind. So this is the elementary school right here. And those are the turbines right there. And so with my involvement, I started, and then that's how I got connected with different opportunities to, I guess, advocate for our community. I initially set out and raised concerns to the principal of Kahuku Elementary and was told that we need to maybe write letters and emails to the complex superintendent, which we attempted to do, and we just got no response. We started a letter writing campaign to raise our concerns about, how this might impact our health, well-being, safety, and learning environment of our students, and it didn't get anywhere. I wasn't able to reach the complex superintendent to make an appointment, kept just canceling or moving, anyway, so that wasn't successful. And And then these things got built without any opportunity for us to just raise our concerns or have our questions be addressed through the Department of Education. And then an opportunity came. And then I learned in that process that, you know, the Department of Education had made an official comment regarding this particular project, and was very concerned that no community input, or, you know, even with my past experience, there is this no opportunity to, you know, get our voices heard, or have them be addressed. And so that's how this kind of inspired me to, working along with Lance and Bianca, inspired us to propose this rule change that would require the Department of Education to consult the affected communities beforehand, prior to making any official comments or support for any, you know, developments near schools. So
great, thank you for that great summary of who you are, just so people know, and how you got involved with this issue regarding the Kahuku Windmills and the Department of Education and their role in silencing the community's voices. I want to introduce the next two guests. I want to just say something about Bianca and Lance, because they're to me, they're some of the best allies we have out there as for Kanaka, and allies to our Aina and our water. And I really appreciate them, the hard work that they do every day, and all of the cases that they've taken up on behalf of our Lahui. And to me, they're heroes, and I wish we could properly acknowledge them and all the work they've done for our people. But I want to just have Bianca, our Aloha Aina attorney, introduce yourself a little bit, just kind of so people know who you are, and, you know, a little bit of your background.
Aloha, everybody. Yeah, I'm Bianca Isaki. I'm very grateful that Sunny pulled Lance and I onto this project. And sorry, I have a lot of family babysitting, but okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. And if so, I'm gonna add a little bit, Bianca, for your sake. And I understand where you're coming from. I have family over too tonight, but so Bianca is with the Hawaiian Environmental Alliance, and she's been involved in litigation dealing with Mauna Kea, with Iwi Kupuna, on Maui, on Oahu, on many different issues. I believe she was also in part of the water issue as well. But so we want to mahalo Bianca for being on here. And then Lance, if you can just share about yourself and a little bit of a background.
Sure. Thank you for having me, and as part of this panel. And yeah, my name is Lance Collins, and I'm an attorney in private practice, primarily on the island of Maui. And I live on Maui, although I do represent several community groups that have been involved in the Kahuku industrial wind turbine facility project. And I've also had numerous dealings at different levels with the Department of Education and the Board of Education over the years also. So I'm appreciative that Sunny included me along with Bianca in this matter. Oh, I think you're mute. You're muted.
Sorry. So 2019 was the year this whole issue surrounding the Kahuku Windmills erupted in our communities. And there were, if any of you don't know, if you weren't paying attention to what was happening on the news and things like that, there were eight proposed windmills, 56 stories tall, taller than the tallest building on Oahu. Colossal monster structures. These structures were built, or they were actually transported from Kalailua last year, starting in November, and brought over to Kahuku in December. The community we're gonna have a little bit of discussion, but just to give you a background, The community there was an uprising in the community against this. And I don't know if any of you if you know Kahuku. Kahuku is a predominantly Polynesian Kanaka community. So it has a large Polynesian population. And these colossal windmills were being proposed, 8 of them in Kahuku, and then they were transported, and then they started building them this year. And I believe they're completed. 206 people were arrested in between mid-October in 2019 into November 2019. And why? I mean, it calls to question why. Why did the community have to take these drastic steps to try to stop a project? What was missing here, kind of thing? I don't know if you guys want to answer that or discuss that a little bit.
I can if I can go back and speak to how Sunny's petition connects with all of this. So when everybody was getting arrested, and there was basically the last few months before they started bringing everything into the Kahuku community.
Okay.
There were a couple of points where the city and the state supposedly allowed the public to say something about the projects and then ignored the public. 1 or 2 points along the way. And then that was about it. Otherwise, people were ignored. They weren't allowed to be involved in the discussions. There was no consideration for what the community had to say. And I think what Sunny's petition for rulemaking, what's so significant about it, I mean, it definitely is involved. It definitely would have done something different would have happened in Kahuku had this rule existed at the time. But I think what's very important is that if this rule or a modified version of this rule were adopted, this could basically prevent what happened at the end of last year from occurring ever again, possibly, because what it's asking what it's asking the Board of Education to do is to adopt a rule to require the department to hold a community meeting to get every school or library's community's input about any development that's being proposed around the school, not at the school, but around the school. And by doing that, instead of it being a bureaucrat in a room by themselves in downtown Honolulu, writing an official comment, possibly consulting with the principal of the school, possibly not, and issuing this letter basically saying we have no concerns. Instead, the school becomes a focal point, not only for informing the community that this development is on the horizon, but also making sure that the department understands more clearly, not just what one possible person might have a concern or not concern about, but actually listens to the school community about what their concerns, because the EIS was a very large document. Did the principal of Kahuku Elementary or high school, did they read the EIS before they gave their opinion to this bureaucrat in downtown Honolulu, or did they just sort of skim the first page and then say, well, I don't see any big deal with it? And then the bureaucrat in downtown Honolulu doesn't care, and so they just send in a 1-page letter saying we don't care. And so this affects every island that has a public school on it. And it's the idea is to use schools as a site for community education and community involvement, as opposed to this top-down approach where the principal is the beginning and the end of all decisions, and it only matters what the principal cares. And if the principal isn't paying attention, then it doesn't matter. And the community is disconnected from what's going on. And then you end up with the situation where you have these massive monsters that are basically hovering right over the schools and could, if they malfunction, could cause serious injury or death.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. So basically kind of reviewing what you just said, the Department of Education submitted mana'o or submitted something to the EIS without consulting with the community first.
That's right.
Do you know exactly what they said in their submittal?
I think Bianca has it, or maybe Sunny. It's very short. They have no concerns.
Okay, so basically the Department of Education had no concerns regarding the building of a 56-story windmills near Kahuku Elementary Schools. Is it also near the Kahuku High School and intermediate schools?
Yeah, so this picture that I took from Kahuku High School, you see these turbines. So this is actually the entrance that goes into Kahuku High School. And then right here is Kahuku High School library and the public library. So the Kahuku High School library is also the public library. So this is where the public library is. These are the other high school buildings, and then these are the turbines. So as soon as you walk in the front entrance, then you see these turbines, just lined up. But yeah, so in the EIS, it just merely states that the students will hear the turbines. They'll just what does it say? It says increase in daily outdoor noise and no other comments at this time. So, had they consulted the community, and this goes way beyond when I started to get involved the summer of 2019, but there were people ahead of me that opposed this project for 10 years. So we're speaking a lengthy amount of time where our community opposed this project. And then this speaks volume of the environmental injustice that our Kahuku community is experiencing. So we have 12 turbines already existing in our community. And now we have 8 additional more, which is the largest land turbine in the United States. And there's never been a community that has been placed in such close proximity to these turbines, schools or residential zone areas. And so our Kahuku community is literally surrounded by these monstrous, massive turbines. And yeah, we have safety concerns, these just in Maui, because we have wind turbines in Maui, there was a blade throw that happened, and the same brand, these are the Vesta turbines, they had a blade throw, I believe it was in December of 2019. And so obviously when we hear of these blade throws or tower collapse, and we're looking at the proximity of these industrial sized turbines to our children's school, yes, we are very concerned about our safety in the event that there's a fire, because if there's a fire, they cannot put it out because it's way too high for the fire department to reach it. So they just have to let it burn out. And, in the event there's a blade throw. And as you know, there was Hurricane Lane that was projected to hit Kahuku directly. And these turbines in the EIS states that it only can withstand wind up to 94 miles per hour. And so, if a natural disaster hits and, there's going to be more hurricanes that are coming our way due to climate change, and how does one anticipate where the blade's going to land, right? And then it's just so close to our students, and the school doesn't have any emergency plans for in the event that there's a blade throw or tower collapse or a fire. And so we're concerned about that. And then the noise, how does it impact the learning environment? We all know that noise, especially our students that have learning, students who are on the spectrum, who are more sensitive to noise, how does that impact the behavior? And then the other health related issues that come, with this close proximity to these industrial size scale turbines. And so, had the school, reached out to the community and had an opportunity to learn about the community's concerns, and they would have learned all these different things, or the community would have been informed of these things early on, like Lance said, and may have had the opportunity to research these things a little bit more. And you know, the Department of Education has the obligation and responsibility to ensure that our students, our keiki, have a healthy, safe, good learning environment. And if these projects and developments near their schools are going to impact these things, then, you know, of course, the Department of Education is not a decision-making body, but it has a lot of influence. And had they come up and said, as a Department of Education, these things are way too close, these are not safe, it needs to be further away, so we at least not hear them and not be, you know, subjected to the blade throw and things like that, then could that had an effect on the DPP, you know, saying, oh yeah, then yeah, these developers need to have push them way, you know, further back, even if that's going to cost you more because of the safety and the well-being of our keiki, that's what you got to do. And that pressure and voice could really help the community stand stronger and be empowered.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how close the turbines are? Like, what is the closest turbine to in one of the schools? Like, is it within like 1,600 feet or within, I mean, do you know?
So we have asked this question to, oh, Bianca, you want to answer that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
I have
Bianca.
to look it up. No, I have to look it up.
Okay, so this was a question that we've asked the developers many times. And Bianca, if you find that, just let me know. And this is, you know, the struggle that we had as a community. Like, there has been no transparency with the developers and the community. We had asked, like, how close it is. How close is it to our school? And then they would keep change the distance. Oh, it's, you know, 1,060 feet from the boundary. And then the next thing we know is to the center. And then the next thing we know is like, we don't know. So, so as far as I know, we haven't gotten a clear answer as to what it is, how close it is, you know, to the boundary. But approximately, if I can remember on top of my head, it was about 1,060 feet. Is that about right? Or am I?
Well, the numbers I have actually are just like what the distance is to the closest property line, and it probably was changing because, and this is another lawsuit Lance and I have. The Director of Planning and Permitting granted some modifications, some waivers to the setback requirement for these turbines back in 2017, and then in 2019 granted like further modifications to those waivers. But the setbacks initially in 2017 were between 284 feet and 591. So that would be the closest to the nearest property line, not necessarily the school. So maybe 1,000 is right.
Thank you. Anything else you want to share, Bianca, about that?
Yeah, I know that we talked a bit about like the 2019 arrest, but I do want to point out that the Kahuku community has been doing a lot of stuff like long before this, and engaging the public process. It wasn't like one day everyone, you know, I wasn't there, but one day everyone just, you know, decided to stop things at Kalaeloa and further towards Kahuku. Because like, just for example, like there was a petition for a charter amendment in 2015, and also some successful actions at the county where like maybe one of the big reasons why nobody knew about like all these setback modifications, waivers, basically like variances to what the rule should be, was because there was no public hearing. There was no way for people really to know about this unless you would ask the director to tell you when that she might be making a decision, or, you know, just there, like, how else would you know? Because there's no public hearing requirement. But because Kent Whanoi Moana and some other, and the Kahuku Community Association, like they petitioned for this, talked to their the city council people. There is now a requirement for it, of course, after the fact, like after this conditional use permit, the first one had been granted. So yeah, I just want to point out that, like, yeah, the Kahuku community has been doing this for a while.
Mahalo. Yeah, so like most everyone else in Hawaii, I just learned about it in 2019. And it was the arrest that was the most shocking part of this, because it shows the lengths that the community would go through to stop this project. And it also speaks to the fact that there was no it supports the fact that there was no opportunity for the community to have any kind of community input, and which is why your lawsuit was against the Department of Education, Sunny, was really important, because that was a piece that was really important. And who knows, it could have stopped it, because when it comes to the health and the safety of our children, I mean, we're hoping that the state kind of feels the same way. I don't know. You know, the Department of Education feels the same way, that we should actually be protecting our children. I had a question. So, okay, so when did you file your lawsuit, Sunny? Was it?
That was in February. I submitted it in February 2019. So it was actually the first day that Ledge started, because I was there and then I went to go turn it in. And my experience was quite interesting. So I went to go turn it in at the Board of Education as what the rule says. I'm supposed to turn it in to the chair. And I went to the department, the office, and I literally was blocked from entering their office. They would not let me go in. And I was just really surprised and taken aback by that experience, because, you know, to me, I think, you know, the Department of Education, you know, it's an educational department that, you know, works closely with the parents, with the communities and the students. And you would think that they would have an open door policy, and yet I couldn't get past the security. They would not let me go upstairs to turn in this, my petition for rule change according to what the rules stated. And it was only until I called and, you know, tried to get a hold of somebody, did somebody come down and take my petition for rule change. But, you know, it's just, you know, if that's a reflection of how they approach the community, you know, that I'm just really alarmed by that. Like, I just feel like, you know, it shouldn't be so hard for a parent to have access to their department if there's any concerns. And, you know, it may not be everybody's experience, but, you know, as far as my experience, they just would not let me go in until I had a clear appointment, or if I knew the person's office number and things like that. So, but yeah, so that was submitted on actually January. So excuse me, January 15th, that was when it was submitted.
Okay. So before this, so when did the actual Department of sorry, I'm just trying to get a timeline, because, you know, if I'm a little confused, then everyone else is a little bit confused. So when did the Department of Education actually submit their you know, their mana'o on the EIS for the turbines? When did that happen? And what was so what triggered your petition here that you submitted?
Oh, sorry, what triggered this petition?
Yeah.
Maybe I should make a clarifying comment. So
Okay.
Sunny's petition is not couldn't remedy what the department had already done, but what her petition is trying to do is basically prevent what happened from ever happening again with any other school. So it's a perspective as opposed to a remedial thing.
Right.
So that, you know, I mean, this really is more of a broader, like throughout all of the islands kind of an issue. So that not just for, you know, wind turbines, but basically for any kind of development where the department, you know, is asked to give official comment on that proposed development. So it's very, very broad. So maybe that's what Sunny's, so the comment that the DOE made, and then maybe Bianca can correct me if I'm wrong on the dates, that was back in 2015 or 2016, right?
2016.
Yeah, 16. Okay. So this is, you know, this was okay, this was very awful. Let's have the department clean up their act. So this sort of thing where nobody's responsible, but then the department somehow still makes an official comment of non-comment, doesn't happen again, and allows the community that's affected by this to really engage and explain how they think the schools will be, school or library would be impacted. And so, if I could, not to interrupt Sunny's story, but I do have to say that the way that she was treated, the rule says you're supposed to file this petition in the board's office, and security wouldn't let her through the front door. I mean, she has a typewritten petition, right? you had a bunch of copies, right? That you have to have like 100 copies or something. It's a crazy rule. So she's prepared. She goes to the door. They don't even let her in. I mean, it's just totally, it's like Kafka-esque. It's just this crazy thing where it's like, well, they have rules and then they're not even fought. Like this is the opportunity for the public to engage the Board of Education, and it's their own rule. And then they're not even following it. They wouldn't allow her through the building. And then somebody took it and then emailed her. Sunny, you had to actually follow up with them to double check that they had filed it, right? They told her, oh, well, we'll email it to you, a file stamped copy, and then they never did. She had to follow up. She does that, and then according to the statute, they have 30 days to make a decision about whether to move forward with rulemaking or to deny it. And there's the Sunshine Law requires them to hold a public meeting when they do that. And Sunny emailed them and said, okay, you're coming up on the 30-day mark. Why it wasn't on an agenda? And then somebody emailed her back and said, oh, well, we made a decision, but it wasn't a public meeting. I mean, it's like every possible area where the Board of Education or the Department of Education could possibly interact with another human being and at least like listen to what they have to say. It was like, don't talk to us. I mean, it's just like, it's this crazy sort of thing, but it's almost hard to believe, except that this is exactly what the problem is that, the department operates like it's just each principal's a little Hitler and they get to decide what it is and you just do what they say. And if they don't think there's a concern about something going on with the school, that's just the way it is. And if you have a problem, sorry, we're not going to let you through the front door to tell us because we don't want to hear it. And we're not going to have public hearings. So you can't even explain or, what your view is on anything. I mean, it's crazy from beginning to end. And that's the problem is the board doesn't understand. I mean, this is right. These are the institutions that raise our children. What are they teaching our children? It's like, why do we have a problem with people having an unhealthy respect for authority and obedience to authority? Well, here you go, because the school is completely, organized where you have one person who gets to call all the shots and everybody else shuts up and just does what they're told. Anyways, I'm sorry. It's late in the day. It's been a long time. Don't mean to start preaching about this, but I mean, I just think what happened to Sunny is totally outrageous, but it exactly encapsulates the problem with the Department of Education. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and nothing good comes of it because they refuse to have any engagement with the community that they're part of and in.
Right. Yeah. And if I can loop this back around to like the EIS process, like we have another case where like a lot of parents, and I think reasonably so, have raised like, well, you're putting in hundreds and hundreds, like almost 1,000 new units, like, and our schools at our capacity, like that kind of thing. And the response from the EIS preparers, and which was accepted by the agency, was, well, the DOE says it's fine. Actually, the DOE says we have no comment. And so that was a way of, again, shutting down parents who have reasonable concerns that should have been addressed in like these public processes. And I and this is a different project, but I think I understand that Sunny has also reached out to other parents across Hawaii that might have these concerns too, like on Hawaii, a different Hawaii project. If Sunny wanted to mention that.
Right. Yeah. So I this, a lot of people might think, like, how does this help my community? And, especially rural communities, we're going to be bombarded by different projects and developments. And, in Kauai, there's a lot of pesticide spraying near schools that are occurring. And then other areas where there's a lot of housing development going on. And then, can the current, concerns about whether or not the school and the current infrastructure can support the increase in population. And then there's, a lot of things, happening. And without proper public input, there's, how does, well, let me go back and say, but that is a big issue. That is a problem. That is a concern to me because, the Department of Education had said the reason for their denial is because, they don't have any decision-making powers, or whatever and so that was the first reason. And the second reason that they stated was, well, our opinion is just the Department of Education's opinion, it's not the community's opinion. But I think they failed to consider that the community and the school is so closely intertwined. And if the Department of Education comes out and says that they support a project and the community feels very differently about it, then there's that disconnect. And then that's where the conflict arises. And so how do you address that issue? Because the appearance of it would be, because it's so closely connected, the community and the school, and Kahuku, the Red Raiders, it's very intertwined. It's like a cultural thing. It's part of the community. How do you, it comes across that, oh, the community supports it, right? And yeah, and just my experience with trying to voice my concerns to our respective.
I think I found the problem. So the board members are actually appointed by governor. That's the problem. Anybody appointed by the administration is just the garut in the whole scheme of things, basically. And so these guys were probably trying to ramrod this project through and did what they could to silence. I mean, I know this is just, I don't have any real proof, but I mean, just look at their actions. So, that seems to be a big problem with the state of Hawaii and the way things are run, is that the governors appoints a lot of these big decision makers in these different departments. Look at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, look at the Department of Land and Natural Resources. These are all appointed boards and positions. So it's the same thing with the Board of Education, and this is environmental racism. They're going to build these monstrosities in a community where there is a large population of Indigenous and Pacific Island peoples, and they targeted this community on purpose, because and it happens all over the place. This is kind of like the new colonization of things. Look at Waianae. They have the biggest, they have more than their fair share of garbage dumps and power plants and things that make it unhealthy to live in that community. So it speaks to the fact that this state is still very much a colony, and that we as Indigenous peoples and people of color, people who don't have the resources or the influence to make these big decisions, are the ones being targeted. And I see it over and over again. You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, look at this board.
Well, I think one thing to also consider, and this is definitely a problem with an appointed Board of Education, is the chair's response to Sunny's petition. So we settled the lawsuit because the state basically, without admitting wrongdoing, is going to do what they should have done a year ago. And so now the petition is before the board, and the chair has made a recommendation to deny it, basically saying, oh, this isn't our responsibility. But this is the problem, is that the department has found ways to basically compartmentalize so that the board has very, very narrow responsibility, or at least it sees its responsibility as very narrow, as policy setting. Well, this is a policy. I mean, this is what Sunny is proposing, is a very clear policy. And instead of the chairperson being honest and saying, okay, we don't like the policy, or the department doesn't like the policy, so we're backing the department. Instead of being honest about that, instead they're saying, oh, we don't have any authority over this. So all of these decisions are made, and then nobody's publicly taking responsibility for those actions. And I think that that's a broader problem with the Board of Education. So, they're supposed to be overseeing the department, but at the same time, they're not taking responsibility for doing that. And then on the other side, you have basically these, bureaucrats at the central offices that are making decisions purportedly on behalf of principals or others. But it's like nobody ends up fully being responsible for any of these decisions. Yet, as Bianca said, time and time again, DOE official policy is used as a shield and as a sword against members of the community who raise concerns about development and other things occurring around schools. It's like, oh, you can't talk about schools because we have this DOE comment that says that there's no problem, or there's going to be a slight increase in noise levels, but other than that, no comment. And I think that like demonstrates one of the problems here with the Department of Education and the Board of Education is that the board has accepted such a narrow definition of what its responsibility is, and then when they're presented with a petition like Sunny's, which directly asks them to make a policy decision in favor of community involvement and transparency, and then instead of saying no, we're against that, they're saying, oh, it's not our responsibility. And so, I mean, I'm not saying this is on a line to Eichmann, but there's this thing where suddenly nobody's responsible for anything, and then millions of people are going to gas chambers. So it's that way of thinking that and so I mean, I just want to say that, like, that's where it is. It's like people are exercising power, and at the same time they're not being responsible for it or accepting that they have power, and they're using excuses to basically allow decisions to be made, and then not to take personal responsibility for those decisions.
Right.
And if I just might add another thing is like this, what Sunny did is a petition for rulemaking, and pretty much most agencies, I can't think of any exceptions, like you can bring this kind of petition. I'm not saying you'll get it timely acted upon, but like, I mean, if there's policies that make sense, why can't people raise it to them? And this is what she did. She did it with the DOE, but other agencies, you can do this too. So just putting it out there that there is this mechanism for engaging the process.
Mahalo, mahalo. And I also want to put it in perspective. Now, let's say that they wanted to build this 56-story turbine in Hawaii Kai, in an affluent neighborhood, or in Kahala. And having grown up and lived here all my life, there's no way that would happen, because everything is by design. The communities that Hawaiians live in are the communities where they're going to put things that will make it unhealthy to live there. Whereas affluent communities where there's a predominantly non-indigenous population, or more of a white Asian population, which is the ruling class in Hawaii, they won't put things like this in their communities. So you just kind of got to put it in perspective too. Like it's racism. It's environmental racism. They're going to keep doing this over and over. And I want to mahalo Sunny for trying to do this rule change and helping to give communities a voice with the Board of Education, which is another governor appointed board that will just pretty much do his bidding. So Sunny, I wanted to see if you could kind of read the rule change, or like read what it is that you want to see in terms of the change in the rule, so people kind of have an idea of what it is.
Oh, okay. So you want me to read the petition for rule change?
Yeah, just that one part where the petitioner hereby submits the following draft text as the proposed rule in the Ramsayer format.
Oh, okay. So whenever any state or county agency or private landowner seeks comment from the department or any of its employees, agents, or officers, or whenever the department intends to provide comment regarding any proposed development or other change in land use within 5 miles of a school or library, the principal or head librarian shall hold a public meeting at the school or library and shall obtain and consider the views of the community when providing such comment.
Great, mahalo.
Yes.
Okay, so going to the next topic. So what's coming next, Sunny? When are they going to be looking at this rule change? Are they going to be deliberating on it?
Yeah, so it took a lawsuit for them to have this public hearing. So that's why this meeting, this upcoming meeting, is very, very important. So it's this coming Thursday. They're holding a special meeting at 11 a.m. And as you know, Lance said, the chair had already made their recommendations to deny this petition. So we are asking, you know, support in, you know, showing up and testifying why it is so important to have community input, to hold this public meeting and get the input of the affected communities before they make any sort of official comment or, you know, support for any development or projects near the schools. You know, because this is this is relevant to, you know, all of our communities across the islands, you know, for the Waianae communities with their landfill issues, you know, near schools and things like that. So we're asking you to, so you can do, there's 2 steps or 2 ways. You can submit written testimony, and you can also register to testify in person via WebEx online. And so written testimony is due tomorrow, and you just email the BOE. And so we have instructions on here. And then the second one is you can register to provide oral testimony during the meeting, and that can be, you can sign up to do that 15 minutes before the meeting. So you have a little bit more time with that, but we really, really would like a lot of support in this, because this is really, really important. It's a way for the community to be informed of projects that will be developing, and not only that, to have, you know, a voice. And I want to speak to the experience that our community had. You know, our community had experienced a mass arrest, and because this was dealing with our keiki, it was unique in that there was a lot of kupuna and aunties, mothers who got arrested because it's dealing with our children and the safety and the well-being of our keiki. And so our children were greatly impacted by it, because here we have our kids at school asking questions and, you know, trying to make sense of what's happening in our community, which was very traumatic. Their aunties, their uncles, their grandparents, their mothers, their fathers are getting arrested, and they, you know, the high schoolers can understand. My kids are, you know, now they're 1st grade. When this was all happening, kindergarten and 2nd grade. So it's hard. They sense the uproar and the commotion in the community, and yet there's no answers. And what's really interesting is the faculty had, you know, because the children were asking questions, you know, what is this, what's going on? And the faculty were actually specifically told not to talk about these issues in the community. So the complex superintendent, Kaz Ho, has sent out a couple of emails to the faculty saying we are not to talk about these things and to remain neutral. However, you know, the Kahuku Elementary School decided to receive AC donations from this specific, you know, developer. And how is that remaining neutral? You're saying we can't talk about these projects, and yet I can receive, you know, these AC donations, you know, from these, you know, projects. So, you know, and then our keiki are left, you know, feeling anxious and depressed, and not being able to, you know, process all these things. And so our community is still suffering. Our community has had a traumatic experience. We see these things operating, we hear them. And this is an ongoing fight. You know, there's so many legal issues that Lance and Bianca are still, you know, fighting in court. You know, the Supreme Court, we have, they're trying to fight with the BAT case, with the, you know, and then the Zoning Board of Appeals, that's now going to be going to court, you know, to fight the legal exemptions that they granted. And so, you know, I hope that, you know, I guess the thing that we can learn from this is to really make change and not make the mistakes that has been done to really impact the Kahuku community. And I hope that other communities with this rule change can benefit, you know, by having, you know, a public hearing, by being able to raise their concerns, and the DOE addressing those concerns and being a voice for the community. And then that will create a healthy relationship with the school and the community. So please sign up, show up, testify for a keiki. This is very, very important. It's relevant to all of us, and I ask for your support. It took Lance and Bianca, wonderful Aloha attorneys, to, take on this case. And it took a lawsuit because the BOE, they decided to hold a secret meeting. They didn't really respond to us. And even in the petition, we explicitly expressed that it needs to have a public hearing, and yet they still decided not to. And so, we've come this far, and we really need all of our Lahui to rise up and really show the Board of Education why this is so important and why they should accept this petition for rule change.
Thank you. So thank you, Sunny. And the rule change would not just, it would actually help all communities in Hawaii. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, it would allow all communities an opportunity to give input if the Department of Education or the Board of Education is asked to submit some kind of position
right
to any agency. Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah. So that's a good thing. And so all communities should actually be giving testimony at this hearing on Thursday, because it can actually help all of us. I had a question. This is my last question. Basically, is there, with all the lawsuits and it has, with everything going on regarding around the Kahuku Windmills and the lawsuits, is there a way that those windmills could actually be ordered to be taken down? I mean, is that even possible?
So, okay, so Bianca and I are involved in 3 lawsuits related to the wind turbines. The 2 that are pending before the Supreme Court, one is the incidental take license for killing of bats and endangered native birds. The other is an appeal from the PUC about the amended purchase power agreement, and whether or not it was okay for the utility and the developer to basically change the terms of the PPA without further PUC approval. And then the third case, which is presently before the First Circuit Court, is the city's granting of variances to allow the turbine towers to be built so close to the property line. So yeah, if any of those lawsuits are successful, there is a possibility that could happen. I mean, one problem, of course, is that, like, what the Board of Education has done is, they basically settled the lawsuit because obviously they didn't follow the law. But, I mean, I'm sure if they could hold this meeting on Christmas Day, and hopefully nobody would show up to testify, they would, but maybe September 17th was the closest they could get. So that's, one of the things is that when the agency is told they've done something wrong, then they're going to go back and try to find other ways to justify what they did. So, but hopefully with any of those situations, that will open up an area where the community can really come in, and finally decision makers will listen to the community. And it is possible, if you look on the Big Island with Huhonua, the Huhonua project, it went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court invalidated the PPA, and it went back down, and the PUC voted to not allow the project to go forward. And now actually he's a member of their attorney is now threatening all sorts of lawsuits. He's actually a member of the Board of Education. They're now saying that their rights have been totally violated and they're going to sue everybody and blah, blah, blah. So, to get those things down is not going to be easy. If any of these lawsuits are successful, the operation of the wind turbines will immediately have to stop because they will not have the required government approvals necessary to operate them. So that definitely would happen. Whether they get taken down and how and when and all of that is, who knows? It depends on what the decision is of the court, if it's favorable in any of the cases.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That actually gives me some hope for the future of Kahuku and that community, because they're actually finding that there's a sickness associated with living or residing near these turbines.
Right.
And all kinds of medical research is coming out about it. So I'm really concerned about this issue, and I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight. Tonight is our last show of the year. So we'll be starting up again in January, talking about self-determination and beginning the discussion on sovereignty in preparation for the 128th year since the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. That's coming up in January, so we're going to have a few guests come on to discuss that. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to just kind of give some last words tonight's show. And I thought it was, I learned a lot, and I hope, the community in the Lahui learned and are willing to help out this Thursday with submitting testimony. And please, share this video, share the flyer that has the information for the hearing, and register. It's super easy. It's really easy. It shouldn't take you any time. What is the deadline, Sunny, for submitting testimony?
So to submit written testimony, it's 24 hours before the meeting. So it will be tomorrow at 11 o'clock. But I encourage you to keep sending it just so that it's on record. And if you miss the written testimony part, it's still okay, because you can register to speak and testify during the meeting 15 minutes prior to 11 o'clock, so up to 10:45. So yes, please register, please submit your written testimony. We really need your support to make the changes that need to happen.
Great, thank you, Sunny. Any last words, Bianca, you want to share?
No, I just want to thank you so much for doing this. And we work with, Lance and I work with so many people who are clearly doing this for the Lahui, for the greater communities of Hawaii, and this is a great platform for them to voice their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. Any last words or closing words, Lance?
Well, I definitely want to thank Sunny for everything that she's done for her community, but also with this proposed rule change, which really would affect for every community that has a school in their community. It basically affects everybody. So hopefully people can submit written testimony or show up on Thursday, which would be even better. And there's actually 3 agenda items that they can testify on. So, you could sign up for all 3 of them and speak to each of those items. So yeah, if you do have time on Thursday, it would be really good, especially to hear from people throughout the islands to know that they would be affected by this, and what a great change to how our school system operates with respect to community engagement. And I'd also like to, I agree with Bianca, I'd like to thank you, particularly Healani, for all of the hard work that you do. And thank you for volunteering all of your time to do this, because especially your show, it's very important to allow people to get a better understanding of the issues. Sometimes you can't just glean it from reading posts on social media or from the media, but sometimes you really need to have people talking about it as a group. So I just want to thank you in particular for the Lahui updates that you do.
Thank you, Lance. And I want to thank our sign interpreters again, Laura and Jenny. Mahalo nui loa. And have a great Christmas, everyone. And thanks for joining us. Hope to see you on Thursday at 11 a.m. online at the Board of Education meeting to support the protection of our keiki against development that could be harmful to their health and well-being. Mahalo, everyone. Take care. Aloha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunny, for all you do.
Oh, thank you.